Hello, everyone. My name is Victor Monga. Today with me, I have Vishwas. Vishwas, I won't steal your thunder. Why don't you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Vishwas. Of course, I've been with McAfee for a couple of years. I joined McAfee through the acquisition of my company called Nanosec, which I ran for 4 years. Before that, I was a founder of another company, and I've been a technologist and engineer at heart. Written some of the core security standards out there. So if you've used your bank ATMs, the way the bank ATMs communicate securely to the data centers, it's technologies like IPsec or DMVPN or ADVPN as they call it. Those are standards that I've written. I've actually written over 30 standards. Most recently, I was involved with the MITRE attack matrix for containers. In fact, our team at McAfee put in about 50% of the TTPs there. So I'm really proud of what the team has done. And, like I said, that's my background. It's a pleasure to be here and be able to talk to the team here.
Awesome. We'll bring you back for the MITRE attack, I guess. But today we'll keep the conversation with CASB. I know a lot of organizations have started using CASB. I think out of fear, to be honest, because they started with one cloud provider and then they realized that the identity goes around it. And if they want to use multiple cloud providers, they need a third party to manage the identity of that. So that's where I think that's what our understanding community is. Why don't you give us your insight, since you started the whole CASB and you founded a company around it? So why don't you tell us, like, what was your motivation when you saw this problem, and what was the inspiration to solve it?
Sure, I can give you a background on that, right? So CASB started in the time when we talked about SaaS becoming very dominant. There are a lot of SaaS vendors coming in, and on the other side, we are having this bring your own devices. So people were actually accessing corporate data through their own devices. And when you had that kind of a model, the interesting thing was when you talk to the IT teams, and they would, and this is a survey that we ourselves did, that IT teams would say, on the average, we're using about 20 to 30, SaaS applications. But what McAfee figured out, and as we sort of worked on this, we figured out that people are using thousands of applications, not 30, but maybe 35 times that, right? Maybe 2,000 applications on the average is how many SaaS applications an average enterprise was using. And so from our perspective, when we looked at it, we said, the first step of what a company needs is visibility, right? They need to know what applications they're using, how they're using it, giving some metrics of what the level of risk is, and then doing threat protection and data protection and so on. And that's how the journey of the CASB started. And this was started again. McAfee got CASB through the acquisition of a company called Sky, and that was sort of the journey of CASB. And like I said, Sky is the leader in CASB space. They are, if you see the Gartner Magic Quadrant, they are like on the top right corner in every quadrant that Gartner has ever published. So that's I'm really happy to be coming in front of you on behalf of that team.
That's good. That's awesome. Ishwas, I think, and we talked about CASB just a minute ago, and you mentioned that it's for enterprises who are using a lot of applications. It's not just for that small application group. So does that mean CASB is only focusing the enterprise level customers who have, I think, hundreds and thousands of applications, or do you think the small business groups are also considering CASB these days for the problem I explained at the beginning of the show here, where they have multiple providers and they want to have that central layer of identity and access management for cloud application access?
Absolutely. So when I talked about, thousands of applications, I was trying to give you the extent of things, but you're right. As enterprises, even small companies, they're all using AWS. They're using your PaaS platform. They're using, Office 365. While the first use case was discovering shadow IT, discovering what are the applications that, thousands of applications that are there, it is not, the usage of CASB is not limited to just that. Even smaller companies that are just using, your, like I said, Office 365 or Salesforce or ServiceNow, they need to be able to control who has access to the data. They need to be able to control, which users are doing what with the data. They need to be able to control any malicious activity that is happening on the admin accounts, as an example. And a CASB provides all that. It's not just for, like I said, the SaaS, it's for IaaS and PaaS. So it works across the board for all size companies. Yes, of course, the problem gets bigger with enterprise, and so their usage, of course, of CASB and using all the use cases there. But even for smaller companies, it provides great value.
Yeah, you mentioned you authored a couple of standards, so why don't we continue with that conversation? In CASB, I know we have read and heard about these pillars, and one of those pillars are, I think, governance when it comes to it. Why don't you just give us for our audience what are those four pillars, and how does CASB provide the governance around how applications are being accessed? I know there's always been a shared responsibility model conversation, and we're still talking about it. Does CASB play any role in solving that problem for customers?
Absolutely. You talk about governance. If I was to look at the four pillars, I would say the four pillars would be, it's about visibility, it's about discovery, data protection, and threat protection. Those are the four pillars that I would see from a perspective of CASB, right? If you see, like I said, from a governance side, CASB provides key features like, hey, shadow IT discovery, which we already talked about, guest user management. So we can look at, who are the, if say you have got collaboration applications like Teams or even Zoom that we are now doing, and you've got certain guests that are, parts of certain channels, as an example. If they're sharing certain files, we want to make sure that those files do not have sensitive data. And if they contain sensitive data, we can, of course, notify the users when such data is sort of shared, but also prevent the access of such data. And a CASB can do that, right? And of course, CASB, like I said, can look at threat protection. When we talk about threat protection, simple examples could be, what you call superhuman activity, right? A user logged into your SaaS portal from one location now, and in a few minutes logged in from another location, and the two locations are so far apart. Imagine one could be China and one could be the US, and we could figure out that, hey, that is just not possible, and we'd be able to identify that. We could identify threats around data usage, right? Hey, we've seen this user, we've understood the behavior of this user, we know what role the user has, and suddenly today we are seeing him download all the files from a particular SaaS application. So we know that this is something very anomalous, and we are able to flag that, right? And those are the kind of things that we are able to do with the CASB. Of course, you can also do things like, once you've got these issues identified, you can do a lot of things around what you want to do as a result. Some simple things could be just coaching a user, right? Because like we say, the human is the sort of the weakest element in the link of security. So just coaching the user, giving them just in time feedback, right, into, hey, you just shared this file, and this is a sensitive file. This is what sensitive data looks like. Whenever you're doing this, do not do certain things on certain channel, and this is how you figure out that this channel has external users, as an example. So giving them in context sort of a feedback is great. But then you can also do automatic remediation, self protection, quarantining files. You could do all sorts of things with this.
I think that's great. You mentioned about the human element. I think humans are the primary attack vector. We have heard about it. I mean, spear phishing and phishing is still the primary staying the top. So how as an attacker, if I were have to enumerate and figure out to get into a corporation, why would I figure out to actually go through the hoops of security controls when I can just ask someone to give their password and bypass all of those controls? So that's great. I think that's great to hear that CASB actually provides that overall, when it comes to human element as well, overall prevention and protection, and I would say detection as well for the SOC teams. Now, we talked about what is CASB, and you explained it beautifully already. How does it work? I think for our audience, it'd be nice for them to hear from you. How does CASB actually gets implemented? Doesn't have to get it too much into the weeds, but overall, high level, what would you say? How does CASB work?
Yeah, I could go into two angles of it, right? One is what are the functionalities. The functionalities would be, I would say, first is discovery, right? Hey, discovering like the various apps that your enterprise is using, and we figured, like I said, security administrators do not know the extent of SaaS usage in a lot of cases, right? And this is how this whole journey started. But then, classifying those apps, right? You have applications that are there, but some are more sensitive than the other, right? And we want to make sure that we are able to give you some measure of risk of the kind of data that is being exported into the apps, giving some measure of the security that is being security controls that the SaaS providers themselves have. And so that's the second thing. And third part of it would be, what you call remediation, right? What do you do when things go bad? That's one angle of looking at, how CASB work. The other angle of looking at it is, what is the telemetry, or what are the components that you have to deploy to make things work, right? So one is when we talk discovery, it's all about figuring out what are people already using. So a very simple way of doing that is looking at logs from your web gateways, your firewalls, right? So having the CASB has connectors to all these logs, is able to ingest it, figure out the SaaS applications, or the application that an enterprise or a branch of an enterprise is using, and be able to make help with the discovery. So that's one component, the log side. The other parts are APIs. If you look at a lot of the more mature SaaS applications out there, they provide APIs for you, right? How do you access the application? You can get the usage data of the application. You can do controls on the application by sort of by using these apps. And even in this case, you just need to provide certain credentials to the CASB. The CASB would be able to, on your behalf, look at that, call those APIs and be able to get data that is useful to secure that application, right? And API based, when I'm saying APIs, it depends on what the service provider provides, right? It's very service provider dependent. So the APIs would be very different from the way you have ServiceNow versus Workday versus Salesforce versus AWS. So that's the second part of it. The third part of it is the proxy, right? You've done some discovery, you've done some, like I said, you got things from APIs, but APIs, like I said, are not consistent. They cannot work across the APIs are very powerful for very mature SaaS applications or platforms, but for applications that are not mature, you cannot use the APIs, right, in certain cases. And so, and there are certain use cases that even the more mature platform may not even provide with the APIs. And so that's where the proxies come in. You could have a forward proxy or reverse proxy. There are advantages of forward proxy versus reverse proxy, and we could go deeper into it. But in a very simple case, forward proxy is, taking care of all traffic that goes out from a location. So as long as either you have a managed device or you are in a managed location, so you're in a branch, office, a campus, or whatever else, you could use a forward proxy, because then all traffic coming out would go through the forward proxy and you could secure things there. However, if you have a lot of BYOD devices, right, bring your own device, and you want these devices to be able to access your SaaS applications, a forward proxy will not work, because you cannot apply a forward proxy. And that's where the reverse proxy approach comes in. It can work for all your devices and all your sort of all your applications. But again, when you talk reverse proxy, it is limited by the number of applications you can support. It cannot work for every application, because it requires specific controls for the kind of application that is there, right? So that's where the various components are, and that's how I see you would deploy a CASB, right? So to start off, what you do is, like I said, just get some visibility through logs, some basic controls through APIs, then get some, forward proxy through, using forward proxy, getting some controls in your key locations like offices, branch offices, and so on. But now that we are all working from home and lots of times accessing things from our home devices, that may not cut it. And so we need the reverse proxy. And that would be the path or the journey that people would have to take to adopt a CASB, in my view. I know I went more than what you asked, but yeah.
No, this is helpful, and we might have to bring you back and really record one session on how to deploy CASB, or maybe do's and don'ts and gotchas and pitfalls. I think another question for me actually is, when it comes to CASB, at what point organizations or security leaders will start asking themselves that, do I need CASB now? At what point they should consider that I should go and look for CASB, or I should look for CASB providers because I have reached this threshold, I've gone through this. Is it a kind of checklist or self-verification or self-assessment that if you have met these 3, 5, 10 criteria, then you should definitely consider a CASB?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's the way I'm seeing the trend, right? While earlier, maybe in the past, the companies used one or two applications of few applications and throughout throughout their enterprise, but maybe they had a long tail, like I said, 2000 applications, but they were used in some corner of the company, right? So when that was the case, you need not necessarily get a CASB for you would not need a CASB in all the cases, right? If you are using a few applications, you are not so concerned about security of your data because you knew the kind of data that is going, it is not critical, you would not care about it. However, if you see the way the world is headed, right, we are moving to a model, not just a long tail SaaS, we are moving to a model of a fat tail of SaaS, which means throughout the enterprise, we are not adopting just 2 or 5 applications, we are adopting hundreds of applications. And so for my take is, as we get to that model, more and more companies need to adopt that barrier of using a SaaS comes down, or using a CASB comes down greatly, and that's how I see it. Again, there I would not say there is a sort of a threshold of using it, but I think it is all about what is the kind of data that is going out that you already know about, what is the risk that you can yourself take, right? Hey, I do not know the amount of data, I do not know SaaS, but I know all my data is probably all public, so I don't care. Then you probably don't need it. But if you sort of are seeing that hey, you've used SaaS for your very critical applications, right? That's where the sort of the CASB comes in my view.
Gotcha. And this question might have a little prejudice from you, but I'm going to ask what would be the criteria when a security leader is asking or checking for CASB providers, vendors out there? I know you have a great product when it comes to CASB, but what advice would you give to your community, to your fellow security leaders that, hey, check these things when it comes to your considering for a CASB vendor or provider or product?
Yeah, I know, like you said, yes, of course, I may be biased, but I'll try to give you an unbiased opinion, right, as far as possible, of course, right? So from my perspective, right, there are two sides to it, right? What are the use cases that somebody needs, right? What are the risks that they have? Every CASB has some, like I gave you the 4 models in which CASB works, right? Whether it's logs, APIs, forward proxy, reverse proxy, each one have their own advantages. You have to map your use cases and say, for this use case, I need a strong, because I'm going to allow BYOD as an example, I need a strong reverse proxy, right? Or I do not want to allow, I don't care about BYOD, but only access to my SaaS application, I'm going to allow it from my either managed devices or from my offices, and so forward proxy will do. So you have to sort of, as long as you know your use case, you will then be able to map it to the sort of the strengths and weaknesses of the vendors that are there, right? So you need to know that that should be the first and most important criteria. Once you've got that, right, you also have to look at the growth of SaaS and growth of CASB. If you look at your own environment, as the usage of SaaS grows, the usage of bring your own devices grows, you have to see, okay, if my company is on a particular trend path, will this CASB that I buy fit the needs of my company as we move forward in the future? So that's also becomes a very, very critical criteria. And even more critical than all of this, in my view, as I see the cloud, right, and cloud security is, in a lot of cases, security tools are built with the thought that the administrator knows exactly how to secure, knows everything about the cloud application and knows everything about the security of the cloud applications and knows everything about your tool. My take is that's a big fallacy. You should not assume that the cloud administrator, who the guy who's securing your CASB, knows everything about the cloud and everything about your tool. So what I'm trying to get to is, a tool that you use also has to help you and lead you down the path of adoption of your solution, right? It has to be something that doesn't just switch on everything today and it tells me 50,000 apps and 100,000 alerts and I'm overwhelmed. It actually leads you down the path saying, you're starting a journey. Okay, this is your risk profile. These are the most critical apps that you have. This is what you need to secure. Once you've got that, then you go to a next level saying, okay, I've got these apps, I've got this. Now, hey, these are the API you could use, probably like I said, APIs, and secure this, right? And so on. So it has to lead you down the path. And my take is, while a lot of us do not consider that as important, with the growth of cloud, with the number of resources that we have, that companies have to administer these security solutions, that becomes very important. How easy is it to administer the thing? How easy is it to adopt the solution? How easy is it to sort of operationalize the solution in the environments? And that I think should be a very critical criteria as people sort of try to adopt, CASB.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think one of the points you said it, that we assume sometimes we anchor when it comes to cloud security, when it comes to cloud administration, when it comes to cloud architect, we try to anchor that the team or the person, he or she knows about all of it, the front end, the back end, what's going on. We shouldn't. The tools or the products that we are trying to use for security, such as CASB, should help us map those. Here's the last question, and we'll wrap up this session with this
Exactly.
one. Where do you see CASB going? What's next for CASB, or this technology evolving? Where do you feel that this technology is going to have to evolve as the next?
Correct. So there are two angles to it. Right? One is how does cloud security itself evolve, and second is what else is merging with cloud security. If you see where is cloud security evolving, I would say two key things. Right, 10 years back we talked about security eating the world. It's now APIs eating the world, as an example. Right. So it's no more about the endpoints, are no more security, no more software. It's all about APIs. And so from my perspective, just like we had CASB securing software, the CASB has to move towards securing APIs, because APIs, if you look at SaaS itself has moved that way, right? We had horizontal SaaS, which was taking a traditional application, which is what was the first generation of SaaS, right? Taking a traditional applications that were running on-prem, but now delivering it through the cloud, right? It was same application delivered through the cloud. But now if you look at what we call vertical SaaS or micro SaaS, as people call it, it's about companies like Twilio or Plaid. They're not full feature applications. They're actually portions of the application. So Twilio provides you, unified collaboration. So you could embed that into any application, and now you can, send SMS to your users. You could allow collaboration between your users, phone calls between your users, right? And so on. So what is happening is, from SaaS, from becoming like I said, a model where you just take a traditional app and deliver it through the cloud, which was the first generation. Second generation, more verticalized. And so the CASB has to evolve as the SaaS evolves. That's one side of it, right? How does cloud security evolve? And of course, the other angle of this whole thing is that, as the usage of IaaS and PaaS grows, this CASB has to also help you identify, hey, are there any shadow cloud, IaaS services I'm using? Are there cloud accounts that are there that, I'm not aware of, right? Hey, there are, in my company, there are certain teams that are just billing their own credit card and, using cloud app, AWS, have their own AWS account, which is not under the purview of the security. Can I discover that? Can I tell you that? So that's one angle. The other angle is what is merging with cloud security or CASB, right? And that's where you look at the broader play of what Gartner calls SASE, right? And if you look at that, the basic idea is, people have now moved out of offices, applications have moved out to data centers to the cloud. How do you create an experience that is, performant as well as secure? And that's what SASE is about, right? So basically, if I'm using and accessing my applications, no matter where it resides, from my home, how do I make sure it is secure, but how do I also make sure it is performant? And so, it's combined. So CASB is now combining with technologies like, I would say, like what you call cloud web gateways. You're adding things like remote browser isolation. You're adding firewall as a service, right? To provide this whole sort of functionality that you actually had, the security that you had when you were working from within your enterprise, now through this sort of edge. And that's what they call SASE, and CASB becomes a critical part of SASE. And those are two sort of key evolution directions that I see this going.
Awesome, and we'll see how the industry turns and where and how CASB fits into the SASE portfolio. Well, Vishwas, thanks so much for speaking with us, giving us insights about CASB, and I think this was very helpful. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me.